Audrey Morgan. I was McQuaig, August the 11th, 1943. I was born on Alberta Street in Schreiber. My father's parents were born in Canada. My mother's parents were born in England. I got married on the 31st of January 1964 to Michael Stanley Morgan. He moved up to live with his brother and work in Schreiber, lived right across the street from me, and that's how I met him. I have 3 children. Rick is going to be 50 in August. Bob is 45, and Sharon is 47. Oh, yes. 6 of them, and 2 great-grandchildren. 2.5 great-grandchildren. I worked, first time I worked was in Manitouwadge. We lived there for 5 years, and I cooked for Natural Resources down there. And planted trees down there. It was a fun job. And I come back here, and I worked for, I think, about 5 shifts at the Voyageur for Millie. And when the Mayfair Hotel was there, I cooked in the restaurant there for a while. Then I worked at Cacamos for 3 years, and then I went to the mill for 25.5 years. Yes, I volunteer. I volunteer my cooking. We cook and we sell it and give all the proceeds to either people who need it or our organizations who need it. We host 2 luncheons a year, and all the proceeds of that goes to the Humane Society. I've just volunteered to work at all kinds of different places. I've been on the executive for the curling club. I volunteer at the Legion all the time, even though I'm not a member. I'm just wherever they want me, I'm there. I have so many. We were the last house in town at that time. There was no separate school, there was no high school here. There was no roads behind the ballpark. The ballpark was our playground in the mountain beside us. And we played, not politically correct, but cowboys and Indians. And built forts and went down to the dump and shot rats. And we used to, next door to us, we used to dig in the snow and make rooms there and crawl all the way through it. And oh, we had so much fun. We were the last street in town to be plowed, so we would trudge through the snow to school in the morning, and after they plowed it, we'd just walk the top of the snowbank stack with it. Always wet, always just having fun. And we'd stop at the underpass there, the old underpass, and we'd slide down. We'd always steal some cardboard from Costa's and go sliding down the hill. We weren't allowed to, but we did it anyway. Just things like that. And I never skied. I got skis, I think it was for my 5th Christmas, and had a little hill at the side of my house, and I come down the hill and hit the tree, and I've never put on skis to this day. But we played baseball constantly. I played baseball until I was 52 years old. And I curled, and I played football and hockey and broomball, and all of them. I was in track and field all the time in school. So I was constantly busy. I still don't stop, so I guess that's my nature. Table rock, it's so funny because we'd go up there and all the kids would get together and pack a lunch, and up we'd go. And that leg rock was so huge. It was so huge. I went up there, it's about this high. It's pretty hard to believe we thought it was so big. And I think my brother Jim and I were the only 2 in all of Ontario that didn't like peanut butter. So our sandwich was always mustard and onion. That's what everybody else said too. Ooh, still eat them. And climb the mountain and slide down that big long flat area there, jump in the wintertime, jump into the cave that's over there and practically drown ourselves in the snow. We did all kinds of things like that. Just like we weren't allowed to stay in the house. There was nothing to stay in for anyway. You had no television. You had the radio, that was it. Certainly no computers. And like I remember the first television I ever saw was in Spadoni's window, and you couldn't tell where the puck was from the snow on the screen. And what was his name? Don Geary put the first tower up on this mountain down here. And I remember my cousin saying they lived at the bottom of the hill, and he'd go up to set it, and they'd open their window. Okay, Don, you got it right there. Just you believe that now in this day and age where there isn't any problem with it. But those were good times. So we did a lot more then than they do now. A heck of a lot more. It's just a shame to see everybody in the house. And no matter where you go, you see that phone. It drives me crazy. My grandkids come over. You want to play cards? Phone's over there. My dad worked the work train all the time, so he'd leave Monday morning and come back Saturday afternoon. So Sunday was our family day. He'd get up in the morning, and as we got up, he'd cook what we wanted for breakfast, and then it was out to the bush. We'd just walk the bush, or we'd be picking berries. It was berry season. We'd target shoot. We had this dog, Toby, just a mutt, but he would follow us all around. He'd just keep circling. Like there were 7 kids, eh? And so he'd just circle us, and if one lagged behind, he'd stop and he'd bark until everybody got together again. He was our protector. He was a sweetheart. We had Teen Town. No, that was the greatest thing. That was the greatest thing because everybody got together. We were all friends. Everybody was friends in the whole town because everybody was at Teen Town. You danced, you laughed, you talked. They organized sliding parties at Governor's Hill, and then afterwards you'd all go down to the old town hall basement and have hot chocolate and chips and just fun. Or in the summertime we'd have wiener roasts or corn roasts, and then of course we had, like Teen Town was all across the province, and then you had your every year one would host a whole area thing, eh? And I know I got to go one time to Kenora, and it was just so much fun. Like there was all kinds of contests they had, and there was always the beauty queen and the dance. I didn't get either one. Can't dance, and there was never no beauty. We walked to Sandy Beach practically every day. It was our swimming hole, and nowadays you wouldn't let your kids go alone. We were 8, 9 years old when we started walking up there and swim all day and come home and no problem at all. And then as we got older, we were never allowed to swim at King's Dock. They had a dock out there, and that was always deep. But we had no cars, so they couldn't come and check on us, could they? King's Dock, where the cliff is there and the water's right there, around the corner from Fellenoff's. Yeah, there used to be a dock out there, and about maybe 100 feet out, and we'd swim out there. Dog paddle out there. It's a wonder more people didn't drown. And then this time of the year, May, June, after school, we'd walk down to Lake Superior every afternoon, just sit in the rocks, or we'd take BB guns down there and target practice and things like that. But just we'd do that every day. So, yeah, like I said, we did things then that nobody does now. That's a shame. How haven't they changed? Everything has changed. Like, right from radio to television to computers to anything that you want. Like, we had wringer washing machines. I had a wringer washing machine for the first 5 years I was married, and no dryers. You used clotheslines or you hung clothes all over the house. You just didn't have that. disposable diapers. Oh, Lord, what a godsend they were. It's unbelievable. Like, nothing is the same anymore. Absolutely nothing. If the telephone, you'd pick it up and you'd crank it. Number, please. Our number was 62. The yard office was 1. So, yeah, and then we actually got dials. Then we had 4 numbers, up to 4 numbers. I was really coming a long way. And if you phoned Thunder Bay, it was Mayfair, such and such and such. And like any place you went, it had a code, like and you used the first 2 letters, like it was MA and then the number. And look at now. It's just nothing the same. As I say, television, we never had television. I think I was 13 when we got our first television. And it sure wasn't very good, but we thought it was wonderful. And then the color television was, you bought this plastic sheet, and it was blue for the sky, pink for the faces, and green for the grass, and that was your color television. Inventive, I'll tell you. We didn't use it very much. And like, just even something simple like a toaster or a coffee pot. We had the toasters, you put down the sides, and you could cook one side, took them down, flipped them over, and cooked the other side. Or either that, you used the wood stove and the fork, cooked it on the fire. And that's another thing is your furnaces and your stoves. We had this humongous wood stove in our yard, and that's another memory that in our yard, in our kitchen, of my mother. Because, as I say, my dad was on the work train, so it was up to my mother to get up and go and get the furnace going, and then the kitchen stove, make our breakfast calls. And you'd never know she'd done a thing when you went down, because she'd be sitting there with her pot of tea on the stove and her feet on the oven door, and breakfast, either porridge or cream of wheat or something on, all ready to go. And that was that. And I mean, every time I think of my mother, who's been dead for 45 years now, I think of her sitting at that kitchen stove, right? And that was her favorite spot. And in September, we'd go down to Hayes Lake and drag in all the dead wood there. That was our winter wood. And we'd haul it home and cut it up, throw it down the basement. That was everybody had to do that. We had people down the basement, people up top, and throwing down the windows, and somebody piling it, and that was you didn't get away without doing that. But we enjoyed it. We had a lot of fun doing it because it was the whole family. We were all together, and I don't remember my sisters that much when I was young, because there was me and then my 2 brothers and then my 4 sisters. And so Betty married when I was 11, and so did Sandy and Doris when I was 12. So they were gone in my years that I would really, really remember them. I just remember sitting around the table, and there were so many of us. That Jim and Tom and myself sat on the bench in the back. And we'd have to eat fast, because if we didn't, my sister Sandy ate it on you. Yeah, I have a lot of good memories and how things have changed, but now, the stove is gone, the coal furnaces are gone. The rads that stood, well, you still see the odd one now and then, but that's all we had was those big rads. And my mother had to take all the knobs off them, because we'd go and turn them on and spill water all over the place. And, another spanking. Another thing, you could spank back then, and we deserved it. We deserved it. You got 7 kids, you have to do something to keep them in line. Oh yes, my first memory of the trains is the steam engines. As they live in here, we could hear them coming back and forth all the time, eh? And that haunting horn, whistle, or whatever it is on there was just really eerie but comforting. And then the diesel come along, and they weren't near the same. They weren't as much fun. yes, I certainly remember them well. They were so pretty to look at, you know, so huge, and those wheels, and then come the diesels that, you know, the wheels were about this high, it seemed. I used to get the odd trip on there with my dad down when he was just taking a quick trip on the work train. But yeah, we did. We used to go to Thunder Bay all the time on the Bud car when we had the Bud car here. And you know, if you had to go to Fort William, you just jumped on the Bud car and away you went. And just don't. But then also at that time too, we had what they called number 7 and 8, and 8 would leave in the morning, but it would be going east. 7 would go west at night. So if you wanted to go stay overnight, you had to be quick because you can catch that train coming back. Or the Canadian was a little later, but mostly we used the Bud car because it would go up, it'd come in here at 7:30 in the morning and back at 11:30 at night. So it was perfect, eh? We used that a lot. For 2 weeks, you were quarantined with measles, mumps, or chicken pox. And the summer I turned 6, my birthday's in August, I had all 3 of them, one right after the other. I never got to go outside. All summer I was so angry. Why couldn't this happen during school? I'm done with them all. So, but I got it over with all at once anyway. Cooking. I cook all the time. I do jigsaw puzzles. I used to be into everything, but I'm just too old now. I don't have time anymore. When I worked, I had lots of time. Now I don't. Yes, I've been to Punta Cana. Since my husband died, I've traveled. I went to Punta Cana, and I've been to Sudbury a couple of times, Chapel a couple of times. I've been to Italy. I've been to BC. And I'm going back to BC in August for a month to go out for my son's 50th birthday. So yeah, I get around. And just ask me if you need anything in Thunder Bay, I'll go. I just bought a new car. New wheels, I've got to move. Every January we usually start our blitz. And we do nothing there's nothing to do in the winter, right? So we cook. We make panzerotti and we make pierogies and we sell them. And the last couple of years we've given the proceeds to figure skating and minor hockey, both times. So we may continue to do it. We'll decide in January who we're going to give it to. I'm just thinking more of the curling. When my parents curled, and we were kids living down the CPR house here, and there were no roads. Like you could get to Marathon maybe, and Rossport going west. And because I remember at 16 going to White River, and we had to take the ferry across the White River because there was no bridge at that time, and the road was just going in then. So I was, I say, 16 years old. But they had quite the rivalry with the curling with Marathon. So they would all land here on a Friday or a Saturday, and they'd go down to the curling club, and they would party and curl and whatnot, and everybody ended up at our place because they had to catch the train that left at 2:30 in the morning. So the party went on until about 2:15, and they all run like heck to the station to catch the train back. We used to actually, with Marathon, have, as teenagers, our own, we'd have a few teams that would get together every weekend, one weekend here, one weekend at Marathon Day, and just curl and have fun. But back then we didn't drink or anything stupid like that. But no dope. That's nothing. There was no dope back then. But, nothing, you know. So, but those were fun memories of, and the house parties they had. The house parties, my God, you don't see that anymore. We had a piano at the house, and my Aunt Ines would get there, and she'd pound on those keys, and they would be singing and dancing and just having a ball. Like, they had good times, really good times. Oh, my mom could be bad. She pulls some real good antics, I'll tell you. The time that her and Frank Walker and Gordon Vinecourt climbed the tree outside of our place. You know, I mean, the first branch was about 8 feet up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and Gordon fell out and broke his arm. You should pull a lot of these stunts. I won't say any more because they get worse. Well, Mom and Dad were down at the Hayes Lake collecting their winter wood in September, near the end of September, and they went down the lake to get some more wood, and as they come back, the bull moose is at their wood pile. Well, the bull moose saw them the same time they saw it and chased them up a tree. And my mother said there was one little nub about 6 feet up, and my dad hoisted her up, and she got up in the tree, and he come up behind her. They were up there for 2 hours until my brother-in-law come down with the car and beeped the horn, and the moose finally left. And of course, the 410 was at the pile of wood, a good place for it. And when my dad come down the tree, he broke off that nub. And my mother had to slide 10 feet down, and she wasn't upset about the moose, but she sure as heck wasn't upset with my dad for breaking that off. But the funny part was the Terrace Bay News, and the next week, the big headline, Schreiber couple treed by moose. My mother was so embarrassed. My dad come to Schreiber in 1908, and he was 17. Actually, I thought it was 1906, but Barbie's done our family history, and she says it was 1908, so I don't know. And 4 of his brothers came with him. They all worked for the CPR. Dave, the oldest, built a pool room where Garrity's is, and he owned a hotel beside Garrity's where the Schreiber Hotel is, which burned down. Actually, he had it burned down twice and rebuilt. So he had that for years. He wasn't in Schreiber as long as I ever remember. He'd moved by then. But Ines and Lester McQuaig, Lester was his son, and of course they were here till they died. And then there was Anson. Anson was Norman's dad, and Norman and Bee lived, well, just on Columbia Street. And Anson lived right across from the station. I remember him barely. I was about 6 when he passed away. But the other 2 brothers, Tom and Peter, I believe both died here. His mother came and died in Schreiber in 1921. My mother was born in Schreiber in 1913. There was 22 years difference in my mom and dad. They only had 10 kids, raised 7 of them. But yeah, they all worked for the CPR. My dad retired in 1956 at the age of 65 and worked right until the last day. But like when he retired, he still had 4 of us at home. So, because he was 52 when I was born. So he was quite a man. He lived till he was 87. And like there was just so many kids everywhere. My Uncle Dave had 13 kids. So, I mean, my Aunt Otto, she married a dentist here, Dr. Thompson. I mean, a lot of people remember Dr. Thompson. And before that, she was married to the bank manager who died, and I can't remember his name. But then she married Dr. Thompson, and then when they retired, they moved to Toronto. But like, they were here McQuaigs were here forever. I think I'm the only original left, because both my brothers are in Thunder Bay. So, but then of course there's all my sister's families were all here, all the Burgenaws and the Hewards and the Goches, and yeah, we all are here. Other than that, like I say, my mom was born here, and I have no idea when my grandmother and grandfather came here. My grandfather was the mayor here for a while, George Smith. Actually, was his vote that voted Terrace Bay to get the mill instead of Schreiber. We never forgave him. Well, Aunt Ines, actually she wasn't actually my aunt, but they were, because there was 24 years difference between my dad and his oldest brother. And Lester was damn near as old as my dad. But so they just became aunt and uncle. Basically were my first cousins. But Ines wrote for the paper, the Chronicle Journal, or the Times News and the Chronicle Journal at the time, or something like that, and News Chronicle. And there was always a Schreiber column in there, and then she actually wrote for the Terrace Bay News. She had a column in there for quite some time. So I'd love to get a hold of her pictures, because she's got pictures of everything that ever happened in this town at that time. But I have no idea where they'd be now. I don't think Jill has them. So, who knows? The Mini McQuaig was started the year after my mother passed away. My mother died in September, and my dad put up that trophy that winter. And it started very small, because it was just new, but there was only the 1 year that it was small. After that, it just went crazy. And that went on for 25 years. I think we run that. And then they closed down the curling club, so we couldn't do it. I know Terrace Bay wanted to host it. And I think we let them once, but I'm not sure. But it just didn't catch on. It wasn't the same. So, and I haven't curled since they closed this place, so I really didn't care whether it was in Terrace Bay or not. But yes, because Mom and Dad were one of the first curlers in Schreiber when that place opened. And back then, you bought your own rocks. The curling club did not provide the set of 8 rocks. You bought your own set of 2 rocks, and they were in a box at the end. Because I can remember my mother dragging me there every afternoon down the shop track there at the other. That seemed like it was 100 miles long when I was a kid, honest to God. I'd be running behind her, and then I'd go and I'd sit she'd take out her 2 rocks, and I'd sit in the box. And that's like from the time I can remember. I watched the curling, and so it was just kind of natural that I went into it too. But yeah, it was, and then they had the big brooms. Different than even the straw brooms that. These were almost like a kitchen broom, the wide. They were quite different. But they had a lot of fun. They curled all the time. And they had a lot of, as I say, camaraderie with other towns because of the curling. And it drew a lot of people here, and the people from here to their little towns. And you got to know everybody. And that's something that's pretty well stopped, too. So that's too bad. I don't think that the people in Schreiber realize how unique they are. I don't care where else you go, you will never, never find people that are more giving, more just totally friendly. They talk to everybody. You don't find that anywhere else. You just don't. And I've lived in Manitouwadge, and of course I know Terrace Bay, and I've lived down some little villages down in eastern Ontario, and never, never, never. Like, the people here are absolutely unique, and that's what makes it so different. It's just, it's the people that make the town. And I love them all. they're just great people. So to me, that's what makes the town. That's all.